Welcome to the CleanEarth.io podcast. My name is Mark, and you're here for episode 14. And we're talking about mobility today. And fortunately for us, we've got a guest on this podcast, our very first guest, Jarrett Brown. So, hello, Jarrett. Thanks for joining us today. All right.
Glad to be here. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks. So I did a podcast previously, Jarrett, talking about the wave of transitions to NACS. So we talked about GM, Ford, Rivian, Volvo. And when you and I were talking, I told you how I put together that podcast, and really the outliers were BMW and Mercedes. Now, the sort of big question is what's going to happen to some of the other large automakers? And talking to you, BMW and Mercedes-Benz. And the next day, after finishing the podcast, you tell me what happened. You broke the news.
So on July 7th, Mercedes announced that it would also be adopting the NACS standard.
Right.
So, it's all about who's going to blink first, and it looks like Mercedes was the one to blink first. But I think there's some debate you and I had as to whether it was a blink or whether it's a strategic move to announce first.
Yeah.
So with Mercedes announcing first, they can go ahead and say, hey, we are the first German company to pioneer joining the NACS charging standard, bringing a uniform standard to the masses and really accelerating the reach of EVs here. BMW, on the other hand, can kind of just sit back and say, look, it was inevitable anyway. Everybody's going to do it. Why make a big announcement? We'll do it on Thursday or something, so...
Yeah. Right on.
So I think this is an important move, obviously, as it is with all of them. It's an important move. But the reason it's important is because it goes without saying, Mercedes and BMW have for a long time been the standard of luxury and performance and innovation, especially when you're looking at what we call imports in the States, saying, German engineering. So for them to join that standard is a really big deal. Not only that, but we have to remember that it's more than just Mercedes and BMW we're talking here. Right. So with BMW alone, we're looking at all of their partner companies that they work with, and same thing with Mercedes. And that's the thing where we're going to see the domino effect. I think over time, we're going to see more and more companies come down the pike and kind of announce that they're working to join the NACS standard. Yeah. And when that happens, we're going to see, okay, not only is it them, it's all of the companies they work with. So let's say VW, they're inevitable. Right. VW is going to bring Audi, Bentley, Bugatti, Porsche, Lamborghini. Right. Hyundai.
Okay. Yeah.
We can talk about Hyundai because they have some issues with they have some feelings, let's say, about the 100-volt charging standard. But Hyundai's going to bring over Kia and Genesis. And I think people kind of fail to realize Hyundai's become a force in the automotive world. Absolutely. They're not the little import anymore. They're doing their thing, and they're making some compelling models. Right.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let me go back to the point, because you said some interesting things about Mercedes-Benz, and I read the press release from Mercedes-Benz about the NACS standard, and they did give, some acknowledgement to Tesla, but they did talk about sort of building out their own EV charging infrastructure, high power charging, HPC. I don't know if that's what it's formally called. So I just wanted to get your perspective on that. Do you think that they're trying to take a play out of the Tesla playbook, or are they trying to do something where, being that they are a far more established automaker historically, sort of playing the long game? So what's your view on that?
Well, let's not forget, Mercedes and Tesla have history dating back to 2010-ish, where they partnered on batteries before for some small Mercedes early EVs. Right. So there's that. But going to really answer your question, I don't think the play is that big. I think that what we're going to see here is that all of these companies now are going to become gas stations.
Yeah.
That's what we're looking at.
Right.
So, obviously we have a bunch of companies that already had their partnerships. Most of them are partnered with like Electrify America. However, you have companies like Rivian that have their adventure network, and they want to be kind of in the off-roads and the parks and the places where you're not going to find gas stations. They want to put chargers in the woods, on top of the mountain, et cetera.
Yeah.
Mercedes here. This is a chance. I think this is a personal opinion. This is based on no market research whatsoever, no inside knowledge. But I think that this is a chance for brands to go ahead and establish and identify certain benefits they can, especially in the world of luxury. So anybody who's dabbled in the world of luxury knows that it's all about membership. It's all about, are you part of this club? So Mercedes can now say, hey, we have Mercedes chargers at these luxurious locations. These are our high-powered networks that are going to be here, here, here. At the end of the day, it doesn't matter, because there's going to have to be a standard. So we're talking about, the NACS standard, but however, we also have to talk about SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers, is standardizing this connection, the protocol, the error codes, et cetera. You can only get so crazy here. So what you can do, I think, is you can say, hey, this is where we are. At these places, you'll get discounts. At one time, Elon had talked about having a supercharger cafe where you would go in and, they'd have a restaurant, et cetera. So I think that's what you'll see. But right now, I think it's all concepts. The bottom line is we've got big boys in the charging space already. You got ABB, Blink, ChargePoint, EVgo, Electrify America, Flow, Tritium, Wallbox, just to name a few.
Yeah.
And then let's also not forget that we have gas stations that have also started to do some transitions. Shell has some stake in EV architecture and infrastructure. Wawa, which is a huge gas station where I live in Florida, a lot of their gas stations have Tesla supercharging just lanes now. So you'll have 6, 7, 8 stalls there just to charge your EV. So they know where the puck is going. It's just a matter of how fast do they skate there.
Fair enough.
Obviously, the majority of the cars on the road are still gas.
Okay. So good. No, I appreciate that. And yeah, I mean, obviously we do need to get to a sort of a comprehensive infrastructure, right? And the transition to NACS, right, is one path forward to help us get there. So obviously you offered up a lot, but I think for our listeners, give you a little bit background about yourself, right? So obviously you're a Tesla owner. You have a lot of experience, not only with Tesla. So just shed some insight in terms of your vehicles, your experiences, right? And sort of where you see this going. I know you've already given some insight into that, but just in your day-to-day experience, for existing EV owners and those who are considering EVs.
So I've been an EV owner since 2005. I bought a Chevy Volt kind of on a whim. I did not expect it to last more than 3 years because it was a Chevy, and it's still rolling today. Still have it in my garage.
Fantastic.
I bought a Tesla in Model 3 Performance. It's a car I've been dreaming of for quite some time in March. And it really is a whole order of magnitude stepping forward, charging from J1772, which is what the Volt uses, and which is really just kind of the daddy to CCS, if you will, to the NACS standard, which Tesla uses. That the reason being are 1, speed, 2, durability. So there's moving parts on the J1772 connector. There's actually a little clip that you have to use. And same with the CCS chargers, there's actually a really large connector, a very thick, heavy cable. And the charging at those networks, at any of the networks that use those, you're required to interact with a screen. So you're interacting with basically a gas pump that may or may not be owned by the storefront that whose land it sits on. It could be owned by the charging network. So when you get to those, they have screens that are often exposed to direct sunlight. Those screens fade, they stop working. I've even seen some where the plastic has started to melt. And it's really not clear as to how fast you're charging, how much you're going to pay, who's responsible if the machine's not working. And it's always a gamble. Since I've had the Tesla, and this is my first rodeo with the Tesla. I've been test driving Teslas and renting Teslas every chance I've got. So I've had Teslas, I've had Polestars, I've had any car that I could get my hands on, I've rented out. But I will say, whenever I've charged at a Tesla charging station, there's no screen to interact with. The screen's in the car, you plug it in, you're good to go. And the screen in the Tesla tells you where the charging stations are, what the capacity is, approximate wait time. And you just don't get that on the CCS network. And I'm hoping that with the NACS charging standard, I'm hoping that as good of a job as Tesla has done, that they'll be able to extend that network to other providers and say, hey, can we all share this information so we know what the wait time is, so we can load, balance, and shift people as necessary. And that's yet to be seen.
Okay, so no, I appreciate that. And obviously, I'm interested in that as well, right? Sort of how to optimize that experience, and I have some experience with EV charging. You know, I've had reasonable success with ChargePoint. I've had horrible experiences with EVgo. Right.
Blink is the one that's been hit or miss for me. And SEMA Connect, which just merged with Blink. They were the two of them were just absolute nightmares for me.
Absolutely.
Better together.
What's up? My name is Mark Weich, and thanks for checking out cleanearth.io. And we've got some big news for you. We're going to be at IAA Mobility in Munich, Germany from September 4th to September 8th, 2023. So we're looking forward to attending the biggest mobility show in the world. And hey, we'd like to meet you as well. So we'll be out and about making videos about cool mobility technologies, looking at what's coming from the major auto manufacturers and startups. And then also, hey, just connecting with our followers, our community, and making some new friends along the way. So if you're interested in seeing what we're up to at IAA Mobility 2023, be sure to like and subscribe. And also let us know if you'll be there. We'll be looking out for you. So see you in September. And thanks for checking out cleanearth.io. So obviously we talked about the wave and you know your experience as a Tesla owner and having sort of experienced other vehicles as well. Obviously, there are lots of Tesla fans out there, and I'm sure some are sort of very happy about sort of expanding the network, right? More EV charging stations. But what about bringing other people into the fold now, right? Because before Tesla had an ecosystem, has an ecosystem, let me correct that. But now you're bringing people from outside the ecosystem. What concerns do you have about a potential play like that?
So there's quite a few concerns. One, it's you have the concern of what happens to the Tesla network itself. So if we're talking about Tesla as an EV station, let's just say them as a company for their supercharger network, there is a concern about other vehicles coming in. All Tesla's charge ports are on the rear driver's side of the car. Right. So every Tesla that comes in backs into the space. Rivians are on the front driver's side of the car. And it creates a weird shift because if you park a Rivian in a supercharging space, you technically take up two supercharging spaces because you have to extend the cable. So I was thinking about this early in preparation for this podcast is, what does Tesla do? Now, we've seen Tesla retrofit charging stations. They had the combo stations that they ran from early March until now. There's only about 12 of those. Those were NACS stations that also had a CCS dock that would intelligently deploy. We've seen they can modify these stations, but can they modify them to have longer cables? Because we have to accommodate for the fact that these charging cables are on different sides of the car. I was at it wasn't Electrify America. It might have been a ChargePoint station not too long ago where they had taken one of the CHAdeMO connectors and basically converted it to a NACS converter. Or adapter. However, it could not reach the car without risking the integrity of the cable. I mean, you were bending the cable around to get it in the spot that was designated. So there's the concern of the amount of traffic that we're going to see. Right. Etiquette. There's a charging etiquette. You don't just leave your car, and we've seen that people, unfortunately, not everybody's has a home that they can charge in their garage. Right. So some people, if you're in a rental or an apartment or you don't have capacity to have a charger installed at your home, people may go charge their car at a supercharging station and leave it there. Right. Will idle fees be maintained? Will pricing fluctuate, go up or
Right.
down? Will
Right.
the repair fall down? And that's just at supercharging stations alone. There's a
Yeah.
whole other concern for other stations.
Sure. Yeah. And again, going back to the EV Go experience, right, which has not
Yes.
been good for me, consistently poor for me. Yeah. Once we start to really sort of, sort of deploy that standard broadly, right, will we see reliability improve, or will we sort of be amplifying existing problems, right?
That's the
Go
big
ahead. Yeah.
concern. The big
Right.
concern, I think, is so the one thing that we keep saying is Tesla has said, and auto manufacturers have also acknowledged, the Tesla charging network has the highest uptime. So
Right.
basically,
Right.
the lowest failure rate of any of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Switching the plug does not increase the uptime, and that's
Exactly.
the thing that I think that we might be conflating, is saying if we switch to the standard, everything else is, there's a lot that goes in the
Yeah.
background. You have power delivery, you
Right.
have an actual network of reporting and data
Right.
exchange that goes
Right.
back and forth, load balancing. There's a lot that goes on, and just because we switch the connectors does not mean the uptime's going to. So is it going to bring down
Right.
the perception of EV charging altogether? Because that's not what we need right now. We're finally
Right.
starting to see high adoption. The
Yep.
last thing we need is that people say, "Oh, well, we've got this new connector, and 2 out of 5 of the places I went, I couldn't charge. What
Yeah.
gives?"
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I have an article on cleanearth.io about this, about experiences, and really sort of it varies by region, right? California, for example, there's been some impact to the experience because there are far more EV owners in California than the rest of the country. Texas, similarly, but then you get places in sort of the plain states, fairly reasonable, but that's low density area. But then over to the Midwest, they've been dissatisfied with the reliability, right? So now that we're moving toward sort of again this NACS standard, right? Could we be amplifying things for the better or for worse? To your point. So that's a really interesting point. So let's move on. So you gave me a sort of good background about CCS and NACS. So now let's talk about 800 volts. All right.
Okay.
And just to set some context for our listeners, we've got VW and Hyundai, Kia contemplating, right, NACS. And particularly noteworthy is Hyundai Kia, well, Volkswagen as well, but just in the Hyundai Kia example, they want to do NACS, at least according to the company. However, they want to know if Tesla is able to sort of make some enhancements to supercharger to accommodate 800 volt output. So I want to hear your thoughts about that, as far as what Hyundai Kia's ask, or Hyundai Motor Group's ask is.
It's a little bit of a disingenuous play on words without being an outright lie. And this
Right.
is why I say that.
Okay.
There's no capability to charge at 800 volts. Now,
Right.
what you can do is, and there's no charging station that offers 800 volts. I think
Right.
the highest ones out right now are about 400 volts.
Right.
Now, what that architecture does allow them to do is charge at a higher sustained rate. So they can charge faster. I think an independent test, the EV6 was like the fastest charging car per kilowatt hour for battery capacity.
Okay.
Which is great. We need that, because one of the barriers that we're hearing people say is, well, I don't want to have to wait at a charging station to charge my car. Right now, I can fill my car up with fuel and I can be done in 90 seconds and I can be gone. I don't want to sit there for 15 minutes to an hour to charge up. So that's great. However, there's no cars that can charge at 800 volts right now.
Right.
And also you have one car, I think, or no, 2 cars I think they've released with that architecture. And even still, and it might be 3, but even still, okay, we're not going to hold up there. And this is why this is really a nothing burger.
Right.
Tesla there's already been plans revealed for Tesla's V4 charging station, which will offer 900 volts.
Yeah.
So saying, oh, well, we don't want to go because of you're not at this theoretical standard that we have yet. Well, if we waited for everything to reach the theoretical standard, then, we wouldn't ever release anything. So, and somebody can later come out and say, well, we have a theoretical standard for 2000. Okay, so what? We will adapt as we go along.
Right. Yeah, I think that's an interesting point, right? So the cars that I think that currently support 800 volt 800 volt. I know it's Porsche. Porsche Taycan supports it. You have Hyundai Ioniq 5 and then Kia EV6 that support it. I think these are the only three. I think even though Audi RS e-tron supports, or they are on the same platform as Porsche Taycan, I think Audi is only up to 450 volts, if I'm not mistaken. So, okay, that these are sort of details and theoreticals. I can understand why Porsche would sort of implement that standard, right, on their vehicle. But when we talk about sort of the practical side of 800 volts, right, one of the things that gets overlooked with EVs is it really sort of makes us rethink how we use our cars, right? And, if we're going, commute to work, if we're making the run to the supermarket, the Whole Foods run, right? We don't need 800 volts for that, right? And I to your point, it is disingenuous. We should not be socializing that to consumers to be part of their consideration set when purchasing an EV.
Yes, and I think that, and I'll play devil's advocate here. I think that, one, I think you're absolutely right. For the most part, and I get people ask me all the time, "Well, aren't you afraid of running out of a battery?" And I say, well, when's the last time you've left your house in the morning? When's the last time you filled your tank and then had to fill your tank again by the end of the day?
Right,
Every
right.
time I leave my house, I have a full tank.
Mm-hmm.
Usually when I get home, I still have well over 3/4 a tank,
Right.
if we're going tank size or whatever.
Right, right.
So it's very rare. Now, I will say there are instances, and the V4 supercharger is supposed to be in preparation for Cybertruck. There's going to be instances where you have people who have workhorses.
Right.
You're going to have instances where people are taking road trips. And on a road trip, time is up. I know you've done many trips cross country, back and forth, north, south, east, and west. That time is of the essence.
Yes.
However, I don't think that needs to be the barrier to entry, and I don't think that needs to be where we stop things because of a theoretical.
Right, right. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah. No, and I think it's a great point. Certainly in the road trip scenario, right? Sort of I don't want to call it an exceptional case, right? But it is not a day-to-day use case, right? That we take road trips in our cars. So certainly the accommodation for that. But I think in the day-to-day, when we talk about really sort of, the mass adoption, the mainstream adoption, and we're seeing these numbers, right? EV sales are just through the charts quarter after quarter.
Absolutely.
Right. If we're talking about 800 volt or 900 volt infrastructure, right, the question becomes, well, we could implement 800 volt, right, 900 volt, but that's to satisfy one EV. Is it not more practical to perhaps, the average EV on the market now supports about 150 volt charging architecture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Could we divvy that 5 ways, right? And sort of, one 800 volt sort of station versus 5 150 volt stations. And then, of course, there are the exceptional cases. So let's say at a sort of rest area, right? Having those facilities to support up to 800 volts, 900 volts, and so on. I could see that, but I think in terms of the barrier to adoption, certainly it's not practical in day-to-day use.
Absolutely agreed.
And just one other thing too. This is not purely a decision by the automakers, right? By the OEMs, right? You've got the charging manufacturers, right? You've got the battery companies, especially who have a lot to say about that. So I'm not so sure that a company like Hyundai Kia really can dictate something like that. And even Tesla, obviously, with their battery technology, certainly they'll be able to inform, right, sort of, where the market is headed. But also Tesla is vertically integrated as well, right? They can set those parameters, right, or at least play a large role in that. And then they have partnerships with a lot of large battery manufacturers as well. So what's your thought on that as it relates to sort of the direction?
I agree. I mean, it's the metaphor I came up with the other day is, we've got fire hoses and nozzles that can dispense, hundreds of gallons per minute, maybe thousands. I don't know that I'm putting. Bottom line is, they can dispense a lot of fluid very quickly.
Right.
You don't have gas tanks in cars that can receive fluid that quickly. So it'd be like saying, hey, well, we don't want to release these cars with a standard gas hose nozzle yet because they can't receive, 1,000 gallons per minute where we could fill this gas tank in a fraction of a second or a matter of seconds.
Right.
It's not practical. It's not necessary. Now, look, if the technology comes one day, great. I'm sure there'll be an adoption, just like we've graduated from my Chevy Volt to
Right.
where we are now with
Yep.
companies like Tesla, Lucid having these large capacity batteries that can
Right.
charge very quickly.
Right.
But that's what time is for.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, no, great. I appreciate your insights on that. All right, so let's move on to one more thing. So
Okay.
we've covered NACS, right, and sort of
Mhm.
what's happening in North America, and obviously the large automakers, right, domestic and European, at least as it stands right now. We haven't heard from Toyota or Honda on this, and also we've heard from Hyundai, Kia. Let's get on to sort of where this could go now, right? Because obviously North America is the world's second largest auto market, but do you think there's a chance now that Europe gets on board with NACS?
I think, and once again, not an insider. I barely know what I'm looking at when I'm looking at these white papers, but I'm
Right.
looking at a Charin. I hope I'm
Right.
pronouncing that correctly. Announced a NACS task force kickoff meeting call for participation
Right.
on for July 19th, 2023,
Yeah.
from noon to 2 p.m. Eastern. And I'll just read a couple bullets from the purpose of the task force. Actually, I'll just read the header. Purpose of
Okay.
the task force is enable the NACS proposal to move in an expedient standardization process and support the process through industry-aligned standard system-level charging specifications and definitions.
Hmm.
And now this is why that's significant. So I
Okay.
should have said this earlier. Charin is the body that has basically standardized and pushed CCS. That
Okay.
one paragraph that I read right there essentially says, all right, look, the writing's on the wall. NACS is
Right.
here. We got to
Yeah.
figure out how do we standardize that. And some of the bullet points on there say completeness of specification, including system architecture. There's another thing down the cable length, layout, port position
Yeah.
on vehicle, power level
Right.
identification, features of J1772. So it looks to me, and then retrofitting CCS/J1772. If they're
Okay.
not getting ready to retire CCS, they at least see that, hey, look, we've got to play nice. This is no longer a wrestling match of trying to bully NACS out of the picture and say
Right.
CCS is where to go.
Right.
NACS is here, and they
Yeah.
recognize that.
And we heard the SAE announcement recently that they're going to do rapid adoption of NACS, right, as a charging standard. And so the point that you just mentioned about Charin, and then again, these large auto manufacturers, global auto manufacturers, right? So it's really a question of why not in Europe or even why not globally, right? You've got, if we take Tesla, obviously. I think I did say this in my previous podcast. CCS and NACS are pretty much a year apart, right? If you call them sort of
Mhm.
siblings or loosely related siblings. So NACS is a well-established charging standard, right? Or charging
Absolutely.
technology. So Tesla has, a very well-established presence in the European Union. They're received favorably. There's Gigafactory Berlin, right? Tesla Model 3, Tesla Model Y are the top-selling EVs in Europe, right? I don't see any reason, for there to be pushback or resistance by the European Union. So, what's your view on that?
It's hard to say when governments get
Okay.
involved.
Yeah,
We could talk about what makes sense. We could say, hey, look, it makes sense. Why would we have, a round gas nozzle everywhere except for one
Right.
place and to be square? But we see, hey, look, we've got some countries we drive on the left, some countries we drive on the right.
Yeah.
Some countries we have the steering wheel on the left. So clearly, I don't know.
Okay.
I wish I could
Fair
offer
enough.
more insight.
Fair enough.
I think that it would make sense that if Sharon says, "Hey, we're going to go ahead and recognize that NACS is here," it would make sense. Tesla has pool there. They've got Gigafactory Berlin going in.
Right.
I know for the longest time it was the best-selling EV, I think, in best-selling vehicle in Norway or something like that.
Yeah.
So Tesla's got a presence.
Yep.
If they can say, and let's also be real, Tesla's really good at lobbying and convincing, because
Right.
I think for a lot of us, including myself, this whole NACS changeover came out of nowhere, because it looked like the writing was on the wall that CCS was a standard. And I was actually concerned, and I looked at CCS to NACS adapters for my own car, and I'm glad I didn't buy one now.
Yeah. No, that's a really good point. And again, this whole point, the Biden administration's mandate or rules for national EV charging network specifies that CCS must be the charging standard. But obviously, things have completely gone the other way from rules that were established just back in January or February this year, right? And so now, again, it is the momentum of the industry. You're talking GM, Ford, again, the list goes on. Okay, so we don't know, right, when the government gets involved, right, that sort of thing. But we do know Tesla has a favorable presence in the European Union. So just one final point I want to cover with you. Because, okay, obviously there's this changeover happening. So what happens if you're an EV owner with CCS? What happens if you're considering an EV purchase? Because NACS is not going to deploy on these vehicles from these auto manufacturers who've made announcements until 2025. And these auto manufacturers are going to begin offering adapters for the existing vehicles, right, beginning in 2024. So if you're a consumer or if you're an EV owner, sort of what would sort of your kind of take on things be?
It depends on where you are financially and what your necessity is. If you need an EV now, buy an EV now. The adapter is going to adapt. I use an adapter every day to change my Tesla charger over to a Volt. It charges just fine. I've never had it fail. It's a minor inconvenience that costs me literally about 5 seconds every single time I go to charge, and 5 seconds I go to take the plug out. I suspect that some automakers will offer retrofits for their vehicles in the future. We'll say, hey, we'll change your CCS port over to a NACS port. But if that doesn't happen, it's not going to be a big deal. I don't think we're losing anything there. I think that, no, look, if you don't have a need for an EV now, and you can wait, then wait. But if you have need now, just go ahead and buy it. Now, if you get to the point, though, where you're coming up on 2024, 2025, and they're starting to come out, this might be a great chance to save some money. You might be able to catch a $5,000, $8,000, $10,000 discount because they recognize, well, it doesn't. You can go to him and haw. It doesn't have that fancy connector that everybody has. I got to get this adapter. It's a non-issue, but it's a convenience issue. It's a convenience issue. I'll be perfectly honest. I probably wouldn't buy a car that didn't have a NACS adapter.
Right, for sure. No, I appreciate that. So, okay, so obviously we've covered a lot here, and obviously thank you for being a guest on this podcast
thanks for having
today.
Me. This has been a lot of fun.
Oh, tons of fun, and definitely, hopefully our audience enjoyed it. For our audience, please leave your questions or comments. Both Jarrett and I are happy to answer them for you. We're happy to have Jarrett on the podcast, and we will certainly bring him back to talk about e-mobility and tech, and a host of other issues that we cover. A host of other topics that we cover on this platform. So if you don't know about us, check us out at cleanearth.io. We're on all your favorite social media channels. We have a website that we update daily with content related to e-mobility, clean energy, and sustainability. And so once again, thanks, Jarrett. Appreciate all of your great insights, and we'll see you very soon. And for our audience, thanks for checking us out, and we look forward to seeing you again soon. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.